Hey, everybody, it is 7 o'clock Monday night. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm Jonny Torres. Welcome to the Yard Sign. I'm in a much better mood than I was just a few days ago. Man, was I angry. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to be frustrated, angry, disappointed about, and we're going to try to get it all off our chest tonight. Thank you again for watching, whether it be on Facebook, YouTube, or any of our social media platforms. And don't forget, you can also subscribe to the audio version of our podcast just about anywhere on all those horrible tech giants that we're going to be talking about today. Amazon, Google, Spotify, Amazon, all the major players that are making quite a bit of news today. You can also find our podcast on those platforms, at least for the time being, until they decide to cancel us as well. We've got a special guest with us tonight that I'm very excited about, and then our usual cast of characters. And so we're going to go ahead and get into today's show. We'll talk briefly on COVID vaccine, just as a little primer, just to kind of get warmed up here. And then it's going to be all about the Capitol siege and all the ins and outs and ups and downs and every which ways until we pretty much run the clock out until Joe needs to get out of here to make it to the national championship game for something called college football. Now you're not on yet. You don't get to talk yet. Now let me cut over to the main table. And joining us tonight from left to right is our special guest. First, David Leatherwood, otherwise known as Brokeback Patriot.
That's me.
Great to finally meet you in the flesh.
You too. Thank you guys for having me.
For those who are watching and are not aware of your notoriety, you're one of I would say you really kind of came into your prominence as an influencer, political influencer. I would say maybe the last 2 years. Definitely. 2-3 years,
yeah.
Roughly. Yeah. It's one of those things where it's funny. I used to know who all those people were just off the top of my head. As I was early, like Twitter, early CPAC, early Twitter, it was like, and now all those people are completely irrelevant. And it's like a whole new crop of guys, you included, and we've had others on the show. And so we thank you so much for being here tonight. Yeah. And certainly can't wait, because you've been on the front lines of a lot of what's going on. And so I want to hear your perspective, your opinions on what's taking place. And of course, what does the landscape look like? How do we move forward from all this? So next to him is the one and only Joe Wicker.
SEC.
Yeah. Now, who is that? Is that the football team from Alabama? It's
going to be Alabama Crimson Tide against the Ohio State Buckeyes. So.
Just kidding. As a Dolphins fan, I full well know the likes of Nick Saban.
And ironically, there is a little bit of politics involved because if you remember, it was Trump that pushed the Big Ten and all these other conferences to play ball. And it was like a big deal because remember they were all shutting down.
Oh, that's right. They were all shutting down. They were just going to cancel the whole season.
Yeah, and I think some Ohio State players actually, or parents or whatever, actually sued. But anyway, bottom line is Trump made a big deal out of it. Everybody got their feathers in a ruffle. But the SEC kept playing ACC, and then everybody else followed suit. But Ohio State only ended up playing a limited number of games, and so there was a little controversy as to whether or not they should be in this game because they started late. But they look good, so we'll see. I still think Alabama's going to win, but we'll see what happens.
Look, again, as a Dolphins fan who apparently I'm sworn to hate Nick Saban, he's unstoppable. He's a force.
It's amazing.
Couldn't transfer it to the NFL for some reason, but in college, man, he's just unstoppable.
Isn't that odd how those guys fail in the NFL? Steve Spurrier's another one.
Right.
How do you fail in the NFL when you're this huge success in guys?
I think it's the lack of control. I think they can't control the players.
Yep.
And when you can't control the players, then really how much control do you have?
Right.
You also don't have those relationships because
the employees are telling you when they'll come to work.
Yeah, like they're the ones making. I mean, they're making more money than the coaches. You make $2 million,
I make 20.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, of course, that gentleman over on the far right, clutching his pearls, is Anibal David Cabrera.
Hey guys, glad to be here. Glad to be on social media.
Yeah, I know. No kidding. Well, that we know of.
You're next.
I know.
That we know.
You're next. You'll be banned next week. Keep it up.
If some family members of mine had their way, I would no longer be allowed to be.
Remember, to be persecuted, it's a blessing to be persecuted. Just remember that. Just remember.
Oh my gosh. All right. And well, again, so let's go ahead and get into today's topics. With first, I know, again, Joe kind of being in the healthcare industry and Florida being what it is, seeing a continued spike in cases. We wanted to really quickly touch on the COVID vaccine rollout, which, by all indications, despite the media's hysteria on how good or how poorly Governor Ron DeSantis is doing, we're actually on par with every other state out there in terms of getting these vaccines. And certainly don't have the horror stories coming out of New York where they're just dumping hundreds and hundreds of these vaccines in the trash because, Cuomo's so good at this. Joe, again, you firsthand, you're dealing with some of these COVID vaccine issues as a healthcare provider. What's kind of the pulse out there? What's the environment like?
Well, first thing I want to say is I actually feel like Ron DeSantis has surprised me in some positive ways. Like when Rick Scott first got elected, he was really awkward, personally, because he's not a politician, right?
Right.
Brilliant guy, businessman, and, I think was wildly successful. Ron DeSantis, kind of along the same lines, an intellectual, Harvard law grad, I think Yale undergrad, things like that. Really sharp guy, kind of cerebral, a little awkward with the media. But I've really appreciated his approach where he's like, show me the data. I mean, he just wants to do really what makes sense. And I think that when you are a leader and you can avoid the politics of the situation and just make decisions based on the best information in front of you, I mean, that's really what leadership is. And he's done that. So I appreciate the executive order that he put out because of the acronym that we used a lot in the Army, which is KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Right. I mean, his executive order is basically one page, right? The other page is just the signature and the seal. I mean, so bottom line is that the vaccine rolled out as in priority long-term care facility residents and staff. Makes sense, right? It's where the oldest, most vulnerable are. The oldest and those with a lot of comorbidities, otherwise they wouldn't be there. Persons 65 years of age or older, and then healthcare personnel with direct patient contact. And then the only other caveat to that is that the hospital providers can also vaccinate personnel that they deem extremely vulnerable to COVID. So when you're in and out of the hospital, you may not meet the age requirement, but they can go ahead and give you the vaccine. And all of the hospitals have the vaccine. So when you hear the media and all these people talking about how bad the vaccine rollout's going and all this, to me, it seems like they're just trying to create controversy because as of right now, every hospital in the state has received the vaccine. Home health agencies like myself and others, I mean, if we have relationships with hospitals, we can reach out and get our employees vaccinated. I'm taking the approach of age down again because that's the science. So I'm not going to get the vaccine until all my people have, certainly, because I don't have direct patient contact usually. But also, we need to focus on our clients because my clients are the elderly. But then long-term care facilities have all been contacted by CVS and or Walgreens in order to get staff and residents vaccinated. Okay, so their CVS and Walgreens are being utilized to do this rollout for all the facilities. That's smart. And other than that, after that, Moderna's rolling out as well. Their minimum doses per order is 100. So larger providers that can get 100 people vaccinated in one sitting can go ahead and order those now. And it looks like within the next few weeks you could see, probably a more general rollout to the wider community. So I mean, everybody wants it and they want it yesterday, but by and large, it seems like it's working out so far.
What's fascinating to me, though, because this came out in some of the stories I read about what's happening in New York as well, is that there are a number of frontline healthcare workers who don't want to take the vaccine. And like, I'm cool with that. They don't want to take it. That's cool. I just want to understand why. And obviously we can speculate all the reasons as to why. But then you have the people who want the vaccine who are working. One of the issues in New York is that you could be a contractor. So in other words, not hospital staff, but you could be a contractor for the hospital that works with the elderly. And because you don't meet the criteria, they're not giving you a vaccine. until everybody else that they deem necessary gets the vaccine first, even though you're working directly with senior citizens and who are the most vulnerable.
Yeah, but people just have to keep in mind, getting a vaccine doesn't necessarily stop you from contracting the virus that you're vaccinating against. What it does is it stops you from dying from it. So if you have to choose, although it seems a little backwards, if you have to choose, okay, I think the number is like for every 100,000 infections of people 25 and under, it's like 1.4 deaths. And then for every 100,000 people 65 and older, it's like 1,200 or something deaths, right? So if you look at it like that, if you give 100,000 sticks to a young population, it doesn't matter that they come in contact with seniors or that they are vulnerable because of their role in healthcare. The fact is, if you give 100,000 vaccines to people under 25, you might save 1 life, 2 lives. If you give 100,000, those same 100,000 sticks to someone that's over 65, you're going to save 1,200 potentially. So that's the math. There's no other way to look at it. Everybody thinks that they're important. Everybody thinks that they deserve it or whatever. And the bottom line is we just need to get in line according to your age and leave it at that.
And a lot of the stories that you're hearing from, because you do a quick Google search and do a Florida COVID-19 vaccine rollout, all negative press, all negative comments, and it's just because they have it out for the governor. It's such a blatant.
Meanwhile, California, like, look at what's going on
so
out
then
there.
you do the same thing and you search New York rollout, and there's nothing but praise for Cuomo and nothing but adoration for the man. And he's the reason why they're having to dump vaccines into the garbage, because they do not have anywhere to give it. Because Cuomo was going to charge medical facilities $1 million if they did not follow his requirements of who was going to get the dosage originally. Only as of Friday.
What was his specific? What did he have some funky?
No,
thing?
He's a control freak. It was very specific of who can get what, when, and where. And only as of Friday, if you're 75 or older, now anyone over the age of 75 in New York City can get it.
But you saw what he said today, right?
Yes.
He said, we don't need to wait for the vaccine to kick in. We just need to reopen now. That's what he's saying now.
He's getting immense
pressure. How insane is that?
He's getting immense pressure.
What did he do? File for a business license or something? He opening up an ice cream shop or something?
No, but that's the stupidity when it comes to over government regulation. And the only reason why the news agencies had those pictures of people waiting in line is because I think a county in South Florida was like, first come, first serve. Like, you don't even need an appointment.
Right, and they're like, oh, why are there elderly people waiting overnight for this? And then they're blaming Ron DeSantis. And this is why every time it goes back to Ron DeSantis, I just love him so much, because he really is, and he shows time and time again, he's for freedom and liberty. He says, I'm the governor of Florida, but I'm not the dictator of Florida. Exactly. And I don't control how the vaccine is going to be rolled out in this southern Florida county. If you have a problem with that, go talk to the person that's running that county.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. He gave his high level guidance, right? He gave the high level guidance. There's 3 categories: these people, then these people, and that's it. That's the order. And I think to that reporter's question, the gotcha question she was getting, I mean, he basically said, like you said, yes, I'm the governor, but I'm not going to presume to know how to roll out this vaccine in this particular hospital in this county,
right?
To their, it's like, come on, you got to let people.
Every county is so unique.
They'll say follow the science. Then you want a politician to cram it down.
And he snapped back. I loved his snapback.
Yeah,
Are you going to give a statement? Or are you going to give me a question?
Yeah.
Well, that was the thing. That was the thing that I learned the most about when I was in Rubio's office, which was that especially this region, even more so than, let's say, South Florida. South Florida, I mean, from Palm Beach County all the way down to the Keys. I mean, it's just one big metro, right? Here, if you go out to Hardee County, if you go out to Polk County, if you go out to Hernando County, Citrus County, like these, all those counties are incredibly different, even how they're laid out geographically. Let's just take Pasco County, for example. Pasco County along the coastline, very populated, very densely populated, but then you come in about 30 minutes and then it's just rural. And then you've got these towns far on the east end that you have Dade City and Brooksville and and so again the counties at the local level have to be the ones to manage this situation.
And if you let the state government do it, they'd turn around and drop an 18-wheeler full of a bunch of vaccines at the VA hospital, at the VA cemetery in Brooksville or whatever. Like, there's a bunch of vets around here. And like what Johnny just said, though, the bulk of the population's over by the coast, but let the government handle it, and they'll just drop something off in Dade
like
City
they do for hurricanes, right? With hurricane supplies.
This looked like a good spot, I mean, because they don't understand the demographics and the
the geography.
nuances.
And that's why we like the idea of it being as local as possible, because your local officials are going to know what needs to get done. Again, this is what happened during the whole COVID thing to begin with. We were given plans of how to reopen, and then that got filtered down to the states, and from the states to the cities and to the counties. Whereas you want some governors in other states to want to take complete control and have it almost like a well, I know you, so you're going to get the vaccine.
Well, at any chance of power, they're there to grab it. These authoritarian, tyrannical governors in these awful states, and they're having the worst time during COVID. That's why you got to respect Ron DeSantis, because when he actually does have that opportunity, and even these stupid reporters are like begging him, they're saying, please, why aren't you taking control? He goes, no, I'm not going to do it. I mean, that's why, and that's a whole nother conversation, but he's very favorable right now.
So Hector's asking a question about who has to undergo training for that task. Hector, to deliver a shot is considered a skilled task. So that would have to be an individual who is an LPN or higher. So that's LPN, RN, PAs, nurse practitioners, obviously doctors, and also pharmacists can give it. But those people are already trained to give shots. So there shouldn't be a training issue or anything like that.
It's an availability issue, what's starting to happen. And again, and Holly's right, in places like New Mexico and California, it's becoming very difficult to find out what's going on, how for people to get the vaccine. In New York, you have to fill out you have to answer a 51 questionnaire online to get registered to actually be able to
get government for you. That's government.
My parents wouldn't be able to deal with the first 10
government.
questions.
How old are you? 65. Got it.
And apparently it requires a whole bunch of attachments. You have to attach some documents and stuff like that. I mean, again, we've
probably
had the internet.
Probably an ID. Probably an ID.
Right.
Not to vote, but to get the vaccine, you're probably going to have an ID for that one too.
But that doesn't make any sense if you have to have an ID to get a vaccine.
Got to prove your age.
Oh, also what people are talking about, because all of North Cuba is a hotbed for foreigners to fly into. What's the likelihood of them starting to get the vaccine? If like rich and wealthy,
just wait. There'll be an article come out about how good Cuba is. Watch. There'll be something come out as if it wasn't approved by the Communist Party of Cuba, but there'll be something come out about how great Cuba's healthcare is, and look, they've got the vaccine going.
No, that's not what I'm saying. When I say North Cuba, I mean Miami.
Oh,
so what's happening? He's a boy from the sticks. It's fine.
Yeah.
So what's happening is that a lot of foreigners.
But are they able to do that? Are people getting paid under the table to get these vaccinations in Miami?
Anything in Miami you can.
Oh,
get.
everything's a scam. Yeah, everything's a scam. Bro, I got these vaccines. What you got on the vaccine?
My jacket.
You need a little more of an accent there, Joe. Yeah. Hey, yo, I got the vaccines, yo. I got the vaccine.
Joe, you could be Cuban.
I can't fake a Hispanic accent.
Just go for Pacino.
I can fake a Southern accent. I can fake one of those.
Yeah, you've been doing it all show.
I'm glad we're able to get the laughs in now before we move into the next topic.
Oh my gosh,
Johnny.
Well, let's go. Yeah, let's go ahead and jump into that. Again, thank you to everybody for watching the Yard Sign. And again, don't forget to subscribe to the audio version of our podcast. You can do so on all the corporate overlords known as Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, and Audible.
Overlords.
I mean, we might as well. That's what they're acting like. Once again, they labeled, for 4 years, they've been labeling Trump a fascist, but who continues to be the fascist? The ones on the left, in California, in New York, and now the big tech corporations out of Silicon Valley. So let's take that as our kind of warm up for the Capitol siege. And again, you guys saw how angry I was on Wednesday because
you were ready to turn in your party registration. You were ready to.
I wouldn't go that far.
We saw how much angry you were when the Saints lost.
And I think it was a culmination. I think it was a culmination of the past 4 years of hearing very combative rhetoric and I get the whole established Republican look. I mean, one of the things that got me involved was the Tea Party and Rubio kind of being a Tea Party guy and, anti-establishment and hell, we got Charlie Crist thrown out of the party. And, like I loved all that, you know what I mean? I get that. And he's been beating that drum for 4 years. And I guess my anger and my disappointment was that it led to the worst case scenario that people had been claiming could happen for the past 4 years. Because again, I hoped, and that we were better than that, right? Because whenever the riots broke out, Antifa, BLM, any of these kind of people that went out there and destroyed buildings, killed police officers, killed citizens, like I said, you know what? Like, we're better than that. Like, we, again, we're the party of the rule of law and order, of the Constitution. And to see people go up there and take the lives of a Capitol Police officer, a young woman, and a few others lose their lives in this effort, which again, like, didn't accomplish anything, in my opinion, and we'll get into that. I mean, it's heartbreaking, and for someone who has dedicated so many years and hours and time of his life to getting people elected and getting people who you want to see uphold the Constitution and follow the rule of law, and for all that to come crumbling down, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. It was sad. It was frustrating. And the president is not without fault. Mm-hmm. I mean, did he say go charge the Capitol? No. And again, Rush Limbaugh made a great point today, which was that in all of the news coverage that's happening about the siege, they're not playing Trump's speech. They're not playing clips from Trump's speech right before it happened. Why? Because he said to do it peacefully. He said to go up there and make some noise, watch the process, right. And he said that, now did he say, hey, let's all go to the Capitol and make some noise and let's have them hear us, and show them that we're here to have the election upheld and the Constitution upheld? Yes, but he said to do it peacefully, and he said it just as many times as he said that we should go up to the Capitol.
And you can't get his tweet, and you can't, and I mean, unless you screenshot it or whatever, you can't get his tweet, and he's got the message that he put out when things were going bad or whatever. Well, he went live.
Let's go ahead and jump into that. That was already like in an hour, hour into the siege.
What Jonny said is correct. The reason why you're not seeing that, and again, and I agree with Fred, who just posted on the podcast, where he doesn't like the idea that we use the word siege. He thinks of it more as a bunch of cartoons escalating with the destroying the police property. I will say this. I don't think we should reduce what happened on Wednesday. I really do feel that if there was a mob situation, a riot situation that occurred, I think a lot of things could have been stopped. I mean, you have video of Capitol Police allowing people to walk into the Capitol building. Yeah. And then and then there was a different, and we all know people that were were in DC, and some of them that were watching from the ground, seeing what was happening. And there's a different picture. There's a different picture from what happened in the front of the Capitol building to what happened in the back of the Capitol building.
Yeah, somebody has to answer, like, what was the decision?
Cause a problem and to cause a riot.
Well, what was the decision making? Like, who got on the radio? Like, who at command or whatever, the Capitol Police was like, yeah, just let them in. Because like you said, Anibal, I mean, on one hand, you have the cops doing everything they can to stop it. You have people pushing back or whatever. And then you have, on the other hand, the cops are like, okay, hey, cool, whatever, let them in. And then they're taking selfies with people in the Capitol building. So I'm like, well, wait a minute, I don't understand what's going on here.
And letting them out. Okay, let's also make that very clear.
Letting them in and letting them out. Yeah.
So you had the theater, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not using that and saying that this is all fake or or false flag or any of that. I'm saying that you had the action happening in the front of the Capitol.
Right.
And then on the sides of the Capitol, you had the Capitol Police moving the barricades. You had them opening the doors to the Capitol building. Even dialoguing with it. There's even a video that came out. I think came out today where some of these protesters, I guess, found what could have been used as weapons or maybe were going to be used as weapons. And these guys are literally just handing it to the Capitol Police and saying, hey, look, this is all stuff that you guys probably need to go put elsewhere. And so there's this weird dynamic happening because, as I said, there was a group of people that probably went in there with some really nefarious intentions. But the majority of the people there, I think, were just in awe of the moment and wanting to be a part of that moment and breaking into the Capitol and taking selfies and live streaming and posting videos. And the Capitol Police, again, now it's all coming out. They asked for backup, didn't get it. They asked for additional gear. They were also denied the additional gear. And so there needs to be a 9/11, a Clinton-esque, Watergate-esque investigation into all this, because again, if a rally of let's say some hundred thousands of people were able to break in that easily to the Capitol building, what's to stop a terrorist from doing it? Exactly. What was to have stopped the terrorists from going in there?
The only thing that I could think
blowing
of,
up the Capitol.
The only thing I could really think of as to how was it so easy is, and I'm not trying to get on my high horse here, okay? I mean, I don't appreciate the foolishness. I don't agree with it. But when you think about just political protests, if all you say is that there's going to be a political protest, right, in a city, everybody knows, if you're being honest, that if it is a Democrat-leaning organization, the security level is raised because there is a fear of rioting and looting.
Right.
And when there is a Republican or a seemingly Republican-led protest, I think most local police forces are like, okay, some Republicans are going to roll down the street and whatever and wave some American flags, and that's probably going to be the end of it. And this is like it didn't go that way this time, right? I mean, you had 50,000 people there or whatever, and you had a group of people that were intent on getting in, and they got in. I just don't think the police expected that from
of course not. They were
conservatives, Trump supporters, whatever.
Well, they were completely understaffed. They weren't ready. But also, we have to remember, 3 years ago, AOC hosted an occupation of Nancy Pelosi's office peacefully. 51 people got arrested. AOC didn't get arrested. Convenient.
Shocking.
In 2018,
Really?
yes.
She was making drinks.
What?
Yes.
What? When you say an occupation,
There was 51 people
probably
in
because
Nancy
she's a member of
Pelosi's
Congress.
office.
Probably just because she's a member of Congress and she has the legal right to be there.
So she brought. Oh, you're saying she brought citizens?
She did not bring those individuals. They staged a sit-in to occupy
Citizens.
her office,
Right.
and AOC came in,
And
showed
spoke.
up, and spoke, and made it into a much bigger deal.
Right. Then in 2018, you had during the Kavanaugh hearings, you had huge occupations of federal buildings on Capitol Hill.
Yep.
Completely peaceful. People like, and I mentioned this
The
before
Senate office
show.
building.
Yeah.
They took over the Senate office,
People like Amy Schumer, they're celebrities. They were arrested and then they're released. They get the slap on the wrist. Just like anybody that was at the Capitol on Wednesday, that actually went in should. But and then obviously in the 60s, and we've all seen the photos of the Black Panthers, actually occupying the Capitol with weapons.
Yeah.
Is the outrage, is the shock? Because I think what there really is, there's shock. People just couldn't believe that this was happening. Is it because it's the Capitol? I mean, we had riots America burned all summer.
I'll say
and
this.
DC was on fire.
I'll say this.
DC itself was on fire.
Because David and I have actually participated. We've attended certain rallies and certain events. I have never expected there to be an escalation of violence at a Republican conservative event. All the events that we've all been to, how many of them have turned into a violent event?
I just want to say this though. Okay, the whole reason why Donald Trump, a regular person who is not a politician, was able to get elected in the first place is because he played to the emotions of your average American. Okay, and those average Americans, including myself, and this is the reason why I got involved in this in the first place, we feel underrepresented by our government and we feel completely unheard. Okay, so you have 4 years of Donald Trump carrying this narrative saying, we're going to fight the establishment, we're going to fight the politicians, the dirty swamp, the corrupt politicians. Then we have this election that gets stolen, and it's funny, you don't really hear people, nobody really contests that. A lot of people agree there was a lot of fraud.
What are you hearing when you say stolen? I mean, I definitely agree that the law in Pennsylvania was not followed. Election law in Pennsylvania was not followed, and there was no redress. But when you say, and the people sought redress and they got none, the courts ignored them. But when you say, and an illegally, even if a person's legitimately voting, if it cast illegally, then that's an illegal ballot. But when you say the election was stolen. That's what a lot of people think. I mean, what do you really mean by that?
I mean, literally with everybody that I've talked to, and including a good friend of mine who I talked to about this, Rick Grinnell, he led the charge into the investigations in Nevada. Mm-hmm. That was his state. I mean, they put together like a 70, 80 page report to deliver to the state Supreme Court. In less than a day, they denied the case. They wouldn't even look at it. And you know, Rick's a stand-up guy, and you know, he said, okay, this is a failure of our justice system at this point. There's nothing that we can do.
They wouldn't even hear cases,
but yeah, but that's the problem. And like, you could get into all the nitty-gritty and all the details, and then there were also some whack jobs that were like also saying a lot of other crazy stuff. But you know, also fraud exists in every election. And here's the thing, even the Democrats 2016, you know, like they said that it was a stolen election.
Yeah, they said the Russians hacked it or whatever.
Right, exactly.
I was like, what? Some Facebook ads or whatever.
Right, exactly. So
and taking it even
they
farther.
Did that for 3 years.
Well, they did it in 2001 and they did it in 2004.
So election fraud is an issue every election, whether it's used as like.
But it's not widespread.
Right.
But it's not.
I'm still waiting on somebody to define for me.
So
what's
this should be an
widespread,
issue that's unifying for both
have.
parties. We should both come together and say we should just get this shit under control. That being said, you know, after this election happened, for the past 2 months, we have had figures in the conservative movement that have been saying the election was stolen. The GOP leadership is weak. They're not doing anything about it. 1776 will commence again. We need to grow some balls and we need to fight. So why is it so hard to believe that? I mean, there were people within our movement, diehard Trump supporters. This is not Antifa, okay? These are diehard Trump supporters that showed up with shirts that said Civil War, January 6th.
That's not good.
2021. Okay, they were ready to fight, and you want to know why? You want to know why? Because there are leaders within our movement that were being irresponsible and that were egging this on the whole time. So, can you really be that surprised that it happened? I mean, and on one hand, it was kind of exciting. It was kind of exciting.
Do you think Trump egged it on?
I don't think that he.
Yes, I will say this. He did egg it on. If he did not concede in the first week, he's egging it on. The only reason why he said,
but nobody was surprised by that. Trump never admits that he loses, right?
But what does that to the American psyche?
But that's not surprising.
No.
That's not surprising.
It doesn't matter. The fact is, when he did not say that he had lost it in the first week after he was starting to lose things, it made a pressure cooker for people to think things needed to happen.
Also, it's very in line.
Saying that he's not doing it, that means something to the woodwork.
I don't think a concession speech is anything legal. It's just someone talking.
Yeah, it's not.
But don't you think? Single time,
I know, but don't you think? Well, no, wait a minute now.
Well, now wait a minute now. Actually, didn't show up to the secondary inauguration.
Hold on a second. Al Gore didn't concede for 37 days, wasn't it? So let's not talk about concession speeches.
But also, everything that Trump did was perfectly in line, and he actually did have an obligation to do this because it's in line with everything that he's been saying. For the past 4 years.
He followed the legal. He went through the. He sought redress from the government as a citizen, just like anybody else.
Shouldn't be surprised that this occurred because the president of the United States, who lost an election, would not concede to the election.
Well, hold on. But so you're just saying though that if he pursues legal remedy for what he believes are inappropriately cast ballots, that causes people to call for civil war.
We made fun of Democrats that did this in the last election. 16. Oh, what are you talking about? You're going to make people that are the electors renounce their votes for Trump. No, you should do this.
They tried to pass that. In different state legislatures, they passed laws.
Exact same thing Democrats did 4 years ago.
They passed laws to follow the primary.
Now we look just as bad as Democrats, and even worse because
don't ever say "not my president." If I hear anybody say "not my," any conservative say "not my president," I'm just going to roll my eyes.
Biden is going to be our president on January 20th. There's nothing around that.
Anibal, I agree. But Anibal, California and I think some other states, they got tired of it. When Republicans win, they blame the Electoral College and they say that it's an inappropriate system, blah, blah, blah. And this time they went so far as to, I think in California, maybe some other states, pass laws that say that their electors have to go to the winner of the popular vote. Now, states get to control their own election laws, okay? And it really doesn't matter because the popular vote in California is going to go Democrat anyway, so it's really irrelevant. But these states are doing those types of things, which many people could say is unconstitutional because they're trying to usurp the intent of the document.
I know the laws that
And
you're talking about with these 13 states that will not occur.
If you're talking about like violating the Constitution, that's like a legit way to violate the Constitution.
Well, let him finish what he's saying, Anibal.
Just because Trump doesn't concede that he lost and is waiting for a legal remedy, that doesn't incite a civil war. Come on,
this is
now.
a failure in our
anything
system.
about causing a civil war.
This is a failure in our system. We all know that our voting, that our elections. More than 50% of Americans have zero faith in the integrity of our elections on both sides.
That's a problem.
Donald Trump has called out political corruption since day one, since he was running in his first term. So it was perfectly in line with his narrative to blow the lid off of all of this election fraud. Now, of course, it didn't really go anywhere, okay? Was it agitated? Yes. And were people pissed off because he's exposing this? Yes. But now it's a conversation. Now people are really talking about it. That being said, do I think that he directly incited violence? No. But I do think that there were a lot of people within our and even that day, like we've said, he said, let's walk peacefully to the march. Now, also that being said, Trump didn't lead the march.
No.
He didn't go. He retreated. He went back to the White House to let it all play out. And then, like you said, an hour later, then he said, oh, let's be peaceful, you know?
What's surprising me in all of this really is the way otherwise intelligent people are behaving and or ignoring things or believing things that under normal circumstances they probably never would. So
that's totally true.
So as
that's the Q that in my opinion is the QAnon effect.
Ugh.
I mean, and it is a dangerous website.
Well, as an example,
it's
puts
fake.
out
QAnon is fake. It's fake.
I've never understood
Period.
that.
If you still believe that QAnon is real,
Yeah.
then you need to just have a hard conversation with yourself and start accepting
Yeah.
reality that QAnon
Yeah.
is fake. And even
Yeah.
Alex Jones, who's known to be one of the craziest conspiracy theorists in all of our country, came out and said, I'm done with you QAnon whack jobs. And so, listen, I'm not trying to be mean, but let's just have a come to Jesus.
I mean, think about it.
First of all,
it's not real.
Someone should have told that to me before I got the tattoo.
But think about
the Q on my shoulder. I mean, I had to go against my religion.
You know, there's some people out there with it too. You know, some people got it too. Like
Trust the plan.
I know.
I was down. I mean,
if I hear one more person say trust the plan
in the article, it's for real.
It's now fifth dimensional chess. Get it right.
I like Hector's
fifth dimensional. It's fifth dimensional.
I like Hector's reference. He just calls them Q jobs. Which I think is just so simple. I love the simplicity of it, you know. But for me, my QAnon sticker only comes out when I have my Viking horns on, and so you know, I mean, not everybody gets to see it. That's right.
But here, so to what you were saying about election integrity. So there was a poll that was put out by Rasmussen, who did a poll, and listen, all of these pollsters, when it comes to elections are actually really hard to poll, especially when it's very divisive, because they're won by like 1%. You know, it's hard to thread that needle. Okay, pollsters, I don't understand the industry because they're the only people that can be consistently wrong and still get work every 2 years guaranteed. But having said that, okay, they know how to reach out and try to ask as unbiased questions as they can to get an answer and try to come up with legit data. You gotta put your faith in some of it. And Rasmussen did a poll, and it came out where it was like, you know, likely or very likely that there was election fraud in the race. And then with Republicans, it was as high as 75%. And with Democrats, it was over 30%. And I'm like, okay. And I was saying that, I was showing this to somebody on a Facebook thread, and they're like, oh, they're right wing, they're whack job pollsters, blah, 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 and that's not true. And I'm like, guys, hey, look, it doesn't even matter if they're wrong by half. You can cut it in a quarter. It doesn't matter. Yeah. If 10% of Democrats and 20% of Republicans believe that the election is illegitimate, you're talking about like 40 million people.
Yeah.
You can't have 40 million Americans think that the election was inherently flawed in any direction whatsoever. But that's a problem.
Yeah. And that's why
if you want the democracy to
survive. I don't care who won and who your candidate is. And you've got smart and I didn't actually even know one of these people, but one of these guys I knew from the Army was his page, and so, you know, he's a smart guy. I'm assuming that some of the people he knows are smart people. These are not dummies.
No.
And I'm like, how are you just discounting the information that's clear to you? And then on the other hand, believing things that are completely out in left field. I don't understand. And I think people are they're just hoping for something.
Well, and again, thanks to everybody for watching. You're watching The Yard Sign. We've got special guests with us, David Leatherwood, also known as Brokeback Patriot, Joe Wicker, Anibal Cabrera. And we're, of course, talking about the Capitol Siege. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I mean, all that really, really helps the show. And also, for as long as you can get it, go to the corporate overlords over at Apple, Google, Spotify, and Audible and Amazon, and subscribe to our podcast. Kimberly, who we all know and love, and is saying, well, how do we restore the credibility in our elections? And I think the simple answer is we're in 2021. Like, modernize the freaking process.
Right.
We need major election reforms. Obviously, Tim Scott tried to pass an election integrity bill, and that, we knew was going to be DOA. But I mean, somebody at some point, and hell, I mean, even if it has to be Biden do it, right? And there's obviously going to be skepticism behind it. But at some point, we need to come to the realization that all of these methods, even if, even here in Florida where we had a smooth election this past go round, but they are outdated. And the securities and the checks and balances to ensure a fair and an election is just flawed.
Just go Iraqi and just have the purple finger. I mean, just
why not?
Straight up.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, I'm kidding, not kidding. Right. I mean, I don't want to go through this again. I mean, we got rid of Chads, right? How simple was that? There was a problem. Everybody was like, holy crap. We didn't realize hanging Chads was such an issue, right? We didn't know this thing was going to come down to such a thin margin. So guess what we did? We got rid of Chads.
Yeah. But we're still using 50-year-old technology, Scantrons.
Yeah. Listen, I don't think anybody would disagree. Election reformation has to happen. But what's very unique right now, what's interesting, that's what is happening within the Republican Party is it is very divided right now. And it is a traditionally Republican standpoint to, that we're not going to federalize elections, and we can all agree that we should not do that. Then you have old school Republicans, and I brought up Rick earlier, that would be his standpoint, But then what's very interesting and what I think we have to pay attention to, you have somebody like Madison Cawthorn, he represents the new wave, the new generation of the Republican Party. He's the youngest congressman to be elected in modern history. And he is on stage saying, we need to federalize election procedures.
Well, there needs to be, this is the piece I don't understand. So America's such a stable country, and I know Americans probably think that we're not, but actually...
quite stable.
The thing is that when you're having these little pissy matches on Facebook and you're complaining about, your stimulus check and things like that, I hate to tell you, but that actually means that, along with voter apathy, the fact that you have so many people that don't vote is actually a sign of a very stable country, because people basically are like, hey, my life's fine. I'm
almost
not really
90 million people did not vote.
Right. So that's actually a sign of stability. But having said that, though, I don't understand why we trust ourselves too much, I guess is my point. We're so stable of a country. So we take it for granted. We take 100%. Our republic, we take the stability of our republic for granted, and we're allowing ourselves to open up our left flank on these elections. Mm-hmm. And I'm not suggesting that there's a boogeyman around every tree or rock or whatever, but there's no reason. Elections don't take that place that long of a period of time, and it's every 2 years or whatever. There's no reason why everybody shouldn't have a deputized law enforcement officer that is always in the presence of ballots when they're going someplace, or there needs to be better chain of custody. I mean, it's not that hard.
I mean, we have them escorting football teams.
That's right. Exactly. The coaches today are going to all be flanked by state patrolmen. You can't tell me that in every county in this country, you can't have at the precinct one cop that's there. And when those ballots get zipped up in the boxes and moved, the cop goes with it. I mean, that's it. And if you do that, then at least you have chain of custody over that whole process, and we don't have to hear any more about ballots coming out of the out from under the desks and all this craziness. Like, we're doing this to ourselves.
I think the biggest problem that we're having, especially when it comes to the Republican side, is that Republicans do not volunteer at their local precincts. They do not go and watch ballots. The lawyers, a lot of lawyers are connected, but you have a lot more Democrats that are sitting and fielding in those offices, in those precincts. They're the actual ones taking the votes and everything else. I'm not saying what they're doing is legal or illegal, but if we don't have our own people in there to be able to watch the vote and be able to be sitting there all day during voting,
government workers act petty. Well, then government workers also act petty because they're so used to being in charge.
I mean, you made the best comment that you're waiting for the receipts from the water pipe breaking in Atlanta. Like, that's something that we're also waiting for that they haven't given it to us.
Well, and
yet.
when you're an observer,
but Joe, you're right when it comes to things like that.
When you're an observer and you show up, okay, and they figure out you're a Republican, right? And you're just like, hey, I'm an election observer, right? You're volunteering, okay? I'm here to observe. Okay, you got to go stand over there. You can't look at me. I'm going to turn my back around. Oh, by the way, no, you have to be 25 feet. Actually, move the table further back. You know what? Forget it. Go to the basement. It's just stupid.
And in
like,
Michigan,
what are you hiding? Just
if they
let
left
the
for
people
lunch,
look.
they didn't let them. They didn't let them back in.
But guys,
let the people
these
look.
are not things
Who
that are
cares?
discussed the day of the election.
No, I
these
know.
are things discussed 30 days in advance. You show up with a letter saying these are the things that we're expected as a again.
Why do
this
you
is
have
a
to
long.
sue?
This is a long-term conversation.
Why do you
that
have
we need
to
to start
sue
getting more involved? If you have to bust
to be
people
able to see
out
ballots?
Oh my God, I always forget these locations, but out of Sun City Center and from the villages and spread them around the state so that we have one person in every single precinct that we got to do what we got to do.
I'm looking at that table over there, and there's some small writing on a box over there. Okay, that table might be 8 feet, it's probably 8-9 feet away from us. Okay. If that was a signature and it's upside down laying flat on the table, how in the world can you see that?
Right.
You can't.
Well,
what's the big deal with having a Democrat over your right shoulder, a Republican over your left, while the ballot comes in, everybody good, signature,
but what is it?
good?
What is a failure? What is a failure within the GOP is that there were many polling places in these incredibly important swing states that didn't have any geo representation whatsoever. That is a failure.
And red counties need to stop reporting until the end. I'm serious.
I want them
just for good measure.
Moment.
Yeah, just for good measure. Make all the major cities report their numbers, and then we need to dump ours.
So Florida does this very well because we have the Panhandle, which is an hour behind. So whatever numbers we need to get them to come out to vote in the Panhandle, which is solid red, we get that every single time. It's reverse for Atlanta, and Philadelphia, and the other places. But I think we could all be in agreement that these aren't conversations that you have the day of the election or the day after the election. Right. It's what you have before, a month before.
Well, that's why we're talking about them now, because if we don't, then in 4 years, it will just continue, and, Donald Trump will be remembered as the last president of the United States, because we will never be able to have faith that we had any duly elected leaders.
I agree with the sentiment, but at the end of the day, we will continue to have fair elections. And Fred, I do not believe in biometrics because I'm not getting the mark of the beast on me. Thank you very much.
But biometrics should be a thumb. It's just it's a thumbprint.
The mail-in ballot.
If you can't get people to bring in their licenses, you think you're going to get them to do biometrics?
Right.
Yeah, you get them to thumb.
And how do you get people to do that when they're doing mail-in ballots?
And they're doing it for a lot of driver's licenses and stuff anyways.
Mail-in ballots.
I mean, a thumbprint's not.
The problem.
I mean,
mail-in ballots.
I mean, the government will. I mean, look, I didn't think we were going to talk about biometrics, but I mean, a thumbprint's probably not a huge. I mean, as long as nothing's tying you to who you voted for, I mean, that's what's critical.
Right.
Just identify yourself one of a multitude of ways. I mean, in Florida, you look at that list.
I mean, then what do we have fingerprint records for?
They've got like 5. Yeah, they've got like
that's
5
still going to be
different.
digitalized.
Right. No, I mean, in Florida, though, they've got the little card in front of the poll worker, right? And you can use a concealed carry permit. You can use a driver's license, an ID, state ID card if you don't have that. You can use like your student ID. I think you can even use a credit card with your picture on it.
That's here in Florida. But again, I mean, anything. But again, like we're talking mostly about other states, that aren't, putting these measures in place.
We did get it right this time.
So, but I do want to wrangle the topic back over to what we should be talking about, which again was kind of the siege on the Capitol, and I want to talk about the fallout from this, because again, one of the things that also again made me incredibly frustrated, angry with what happened on Wednesday was that for years we've had Democrats saying, well, and you're never Trumpers saying, well, Donald Trump is going to destroy the Republican Party. Donald Trump is going to destroy the Republican Party. And I'm like, no, he's building it. It's growing, because you saw the rallies and the parades and all that stuff, right? But then at the same time, you look at what happened in Georgia. You look at the fact that we lost the Senate, we lost the House. Okay, now we'd had major gains in other places. Again, in the House, we won 12 seats. We don't have control of the House, but we won 12 seats, right? And certainly that's a lot better than we were supposed to do.
We're going to get
media.
it in 2022.
Right.
We're going to get it. There's
But
no
then
doubt.
when
we have
But
to.
the problem that I
world is
took,
upside down right
the
now.
problem that I take with him
pendulum.
again after 4 years of this is that again we could have won Georgia, but what did he go? He went in and he started attacking the governor, and he started attacking the Secretary of State. You're attacking elected Republican officials, who are in charge of the election that you're about to have that could have given us
You're saying that you
the
think
Senate.
that you're saying that you think that he depressed the vote. I don't.
Not only in
agree.
Georgia,
I
not
don't
only
agree
in
with
Georgia, but I think he's been attacking Republicans from day one. I mean, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, John McCain, like he's been attacking Republicans across the board.
Well, can we not criticize can we not hold ourselves accountable?
Criticizing and then talking
it's-
Can we
shit
not
about
hold
someone
ourselves
that's
accountable?
already
But it's
dead
right.
is the problem.
It's one thing to criticize, but it's a whole nother to then be like, well, we're going to primary you, and we're going to, you know what I mean? Like when you're the sitting president. Now, if you're the party chair, okay, maybe that's a role for the party chair.
But well, hold on now. You know how it goes. They'll primary you too. Republican parties will primary their members.
Of course. But then again, like especially after what happened Wednesday, and getting back to my question is do we have a fractured party? Because what I see now and what I see on my Facebook feed, on all my social media profiles, right, from my Republican friends who are still Republican, I'm not talking about your never Trumpers and your liberals, is are you loyal to Trump or are you loyal to the Republican Party? And I think that's the big question that we have coming up before
Major
us.
question.
And that's going to define whether or not we have a Republican Party in 2 years or 4 years.
So I'll say this.
Neither.
I'll say this. I agree with Joe.
You don't need to be
At the
loyal
end of
to
the
all
day,
that.
I'm loyal to Christ
Lo-
and my
loyal-
family.
yeah, no,
so
I mean, yeah,
we're
so-
that's a whole mute point
So
for
God
me
co-
in
yeah,
particular.
yeah.
However, I will say I am also committed to my conservative values and my position.
That's right.
I feel when it comes to this country. On the other hand, we had already talked about Georgia last week, talking about how it was the president and McConnell that was probably going to cost us that election, which it did, and made us lose quasi control of the Senate. And now that's 50-50.
I don't understand what people want. I mean, my whole life, all I've heard people say is that they wanted somebody that was not a politician, not beholden to lobbyists, tell it like not a smooth talker, tell it like it is. We finally get that in Trump, and now everybody's so surprised that he actually says what he says. And then meanwhile, you've got regular Americans who are not really that political, who feel, and I didn't pick up on this in the beginning, I'll admit it. I went to my first Trump rally before he was the nominee in Florida and was standing in line with people, and I acted like I didn't know anything about politics, asking people while they were there, and the sentiment was basically, you could tell they didn't, like this was the first time they'd ever engaged in politics. The sentiment was, I feel like he speaks for me. Now, how did we go from I feel like he speaks to me to he's creating an insurrection, there's a civil war? I think Republicans are actually getting the wool pulled over their eyes a little bit here by the Democrats, because they're playing this thing for all it's worth up until inauguration, and they're not trying to they're not trying to impeach Trump or invoke the 25th or any of that because of this. They're trying to do it because they don't want him to ever be able to run for president again.
But I think it's
let's
because he was
acknowledge
hitting
the
on
politics of it.
Impeaching the president will not cause him not to be able to
we'll
run.
get to the impeachment thing in a second, but I think where I hold him responsible for what happened on Wednesday was because for the past 4 years, it was drain the swamp. It's, the establishment Republicans. It's the evil liberals, the evil media. Like he basically went to war with everybody that wasn't loyal to Trump. And so that's why I'm saying, like, you have Republicans out there who are loyal to Trump. We know people who have started Trump clubs. Okay, not Republican clubs, Trump clubs.
Mm-hmm. See, Johnny, I actually think he made a critical error that's kind of opposite to what you're saying. And that is that because he's a sole proprietor, okay, and sole proprietors are not CEOs, Okay, they believe in themselves. They believe in their own willpower. He thinks he can pick up the phone and just make things happen. He thinks he can convince everybody to see it his way because that's the way he's lived his life as a sole proprietor, successful businessman. I think the mistake Trump made was that he actually didn't have enough loyalty. He brought people in his administration that were not loyal to him.
Threw him under the bus.
He kept people from the Obama administration, which they didn't even expect to keep their jobs. I bet they couldn't believe it. I bet they were like, I can't believe this guy's going to let me keep my job.
74%.
Yeah,
74%.
Trump did not clean house. Because as a sole proprietor, he's thinking, I don't need loyalty, I need competence. And that sounds great if you're in business, but if you're in politics, the last thing you need is somebody who's very competent and very unloyal, because that is somebody that's going to hurt you. And they undermined him the whole way.
But he had multiple opportunities to figure out how to navigate this world that he had thrown himself into, and it was never a proper way of navigating. And he never listened, and I'm going to say this honestly, he probably didn't listen to anyone. He probably had more yes people around him than people that said no around him. So right there, as a politician,
and that hurts
you wouldn't be surprised if this was going to be your first run.
The inner circle, though, his inner circle, his staff was all about loyalty. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's why you saw him get rid of people, and you saw that. I mean, that was a freaking turnstile. But again, like on the outside, again, anybody that went against his policies, like he would turn on them,
right?
And he would call them out publicly.
That's a very fair point.
You know, and so when we look at what happened on Wednesday and people attacking the Capitol, rumor there being a gallows, which I don't even know why they would allow that to be put outside on the Capitol grounds. You know, people talking about stringing up Mike Pence, people talking about and then assaulting the media. Because they crossed the line. They did what Trump had been threatening to do in so many ways for so long. They assaulted the media and destroyed all their equipment. There's
you think Trump knew that was going to happen? Like, do you think
he's been
Trump
threatening that though for 4 years?
No. Do you believe that Trump believed that rally was going to turn into what it turned into?
It's not whether or not he believed it would happen. I don't think he cared if it happened.
I don't think anyone thought, okay, look, the likelihood of a BLM.
Sorry, David. I know you were trying to jump in there.
The likelihood of a BLM protest that's walking down Main Street turning into a mob in once it ends is very high. I think it was 79%.
Sun goes down.
But when it comes to a Patriot or a pro-Trump or a pro-Republican event, those were I think it was 2% ever went into violence where the police had to be called. So the likelihood was very low, which I think was the problem at the end of the day, because the Capitol Police and everyone else was not prepared for a large-scale rush of the Capitol building.
Yeah, there'd been a lot of conservative or right-leaning rallies that they barely got any media coverage.
March for Life was almost 3 million people this year,
that's
and no
right.
one talked about it.
No coverage. The fact that you know what? It speaks for itself. Look, your security posture tells everybody what you deem to be the threat level. Yeah. And their security posture was literally, I forget what you call them, but it's just the gates that it's just the barricades that tell you tell you where to go. Right? I mean, that's it. That's not legit security. And they obviously didn't have enough personnel. So right there, that tells you that the Capitol Police and the politicians that walked in that building never for a second thought that Republicans, conservatives, Trump supporters, whatever these people are, we're gonna go.
I was in DC when
they didn't think that was going to happen.
When Antifa was they had coordinated an attack on the White House, and I saw the security at the White House.
Yes,
and that was
they
a
couldn't
planned
have
attack.
believed it. Yeah, that's right.
There were fences. There were multiple levels. They did not. They were not anticipating that.
The entire seat of the U.S. government, minus the president,
was there.
Was in the one building. Yeah. So that they obviously believed that the being Republican rally or whatever, that it was going to be your typical vanilla, USA
We've
4 more years rally.
So that's the point where I kind of feel that, because I'm torn, right? I'm quite literally torn on both sides of what happened on Wednesday, because honestly, if Republicans, conservatives, you're talking about the most ardent Second Amendment supporters in the country, truly wanted to take over the Capitol, they would have and they could have.
Oh, well, they would have showed
Because-
up with a coordinated attack.
Of course.
Right,
I mean, the
right,
number
right.
of weapons that would have been there,
Yeah.
the shootouts,
Yeah.
you want to talk, they
Yeah.
had,
Yeah.
okay, look, I think two out of the 5 people that died, at the Capitol were trampled. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't like a physical altercation.
Yeah, like heart
they were just
attacks or
trampled.
whatever. Yeah.
And then again, the only people that had weapons there were Capitol Police. The only people who got shot were the people going into the building.
Well, in the beginning of all this, I felt pretty confident that there had to be some kind of like Antifa infiltration, things like that. But looking at more video, I mean, there were people that appear to be just Trump supporters that probably don't get in and get that probably were looking for trouble.
Well, through
But,
the doxing, we now know. I mean,
yeah.
there was Air Force veterans,
Yeah.
a lot of former
But-
military. There's,
But the thing is though is that at the same time, while some of those guys, and I mean the guy kind of looked like Antifa, he was dressed like it, doesn't mean he was, right? But when this one guy's like beating, breaking the window, there's all these other Trump supporters that are saying no Antifa,
Right.
no Antifa, and one guy, in a red hat, physically prevents this guy, throws him back, like stop. So on one hand, you have all these people that obviously didn't want that, didn't intend for that. Like you said, Johnny, they would have showed up with guns. They didn't intend for any of that to happen. And then you have this weird, like, on
then-
one hand
right.
it's breached, but on the other hand they're allowed
But
in.
right around the
It just-
corner, you had the Capitol Police opening the
It just
doors
doesn't
and
make
letting people
sense.
in. So whether they were there or not, whether these people were there or not, whether this guy really was Antifa or not, this all was
I
still
want
going
to know why they let
This is
them
all
in.
going to happen.
I
It
want
was still going to
I
happen.
want to know why that cop ever opened the gate.
Because they were
somebody
not-
had to give an order to do that.
They were not expecting it to escalate as quickly as it did.
So
and
you're
get
saying
out
a
of
cop
control.
on one side
What
of
I
the
will
building
s-
didn't understand what was going on the
what
other.
I-
That
what
could be
I-
possible.
What I will say is this: the hypocrisy that is happening online and to a lot of Republicans right now is palpable. It is such a problem when you have Republicans in the first 20 minutes of this happening say it's all Antifa, it's all Antifa. No, we have
The same
to look,
people that have been saying we need to rise up and fight for the past 2 months.
Exactly.
Give me
So
a
again,
break.
this
Give
is
me a
that-
break.
yeah.
To that note, Anibal, one of the things that I will wholeheartedly agree with, and it is undeniable because we're talking about the security issues, right, that happened at the Capitol. Yes. Was Antifa and BLM treated differently than this rally was
Yes.
in terms of security at the Capitol and in terms of how they defended the Capitol? Yeah.
Yes.
If this had been a BLM rally, if this has been an Antifa rally, there would have been rubber bullets, tear gas. There would have been, you name it. It would have been an all-out war.
And that's because
at the
Antifa and
Capitol.
BLM has a history. They have a history. You know what's coming.
If this was a BLM
businesses don't even think about it. They go ahead and board up. It's like a hurricane's coming. They just all board up. Everybody knows
But
what's
they
coming.
should have treated it with just as much with just as much importance.
got
My
This is
neighbor
now.
was there, and he
agree.
got tear gas. There were rubber
Yeah.
bullets. If this was a BLM riot, Ashley Babbitt. Well, there would be riots and cities burning down all
Well, no,
around.
that's
that's
the
what
other
I was
thing.
going to say. If this
Yeah.
was a BLM riot, they would still be rioting
Right,
in
right.
DC
Well-
5 days after the
well,
situation.
and also, there was some problem.
And Joe Biden would be silent.
And I'm not minimizing it for sure, but then you see video, it's like, okay, so you broke in and supposedly the way the media is calling it, it's like an insurrection. But then at the same time, you just see people wandering through
Right.
Congress almost like they can't believe that they're there, right?
Being escorted. They're like being escorted through.
They're like
their
wandering.
faces are like,
Yeah, they're like wandering around and they're
how
taking
did this
selfies.
happen?
It's like, oh, I can't believe they opened up the Capitol for us. Oh,
There is literally
what do
one
we do
video.
now?
Right.
There is
What
one
do we do
video
now?
where there is one or two Capitol Police officers at a set of doors, and he's just literally just escorting
Yeah.
them out.
Yes.
They're just walking
Yeah.
by him, and it's almost like, okay, have a good day.
and
Thank
they're
you for
like
coming.
fist bumping, and they're like fist bumping, and they're like, yeah, bro, we're together. And
they're
I'm like,
walking through the rotunda, like
Right.
following
Well,
the
and some-
lines. It's
Yeah,
so
yes,
weird.
yes.
It's such a weird concept.
They knocked over 2 trash cans. They're like, oh, domestic terror.
yeah,
But
and,
again-
and like they didn't. Yeah, nothing really happens. In the
No
sense
fires.
That, like the place isn't burned down or whatever. And then it's like the police are like,
property
okay, guys, you got to
destruction.
go, and they're escorting them out. I'm like, what the heck? And then on the other side, cops are shooting. I mean, like,
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's a big difference between the front and the back. Even it's such a weird thing. And now the reason why you hear these words being thrown out as like terrorism and all that is because the media is trying to get its licks in before the president gets.
What are they going to do without Trump? What are they going to do without Trump?
They're going to go bankrupt.
What are they going to do?
Say it's going to be crazy.
No, look.
What are we going to talk about in 2 weeks? What are we going to talk about?
Anibal can back me up on this. I believe that Twitter lost $5 billion. $5 billion in valuation.
12%, right?
Yeah, the minute that they suspended Donald Trump's account.
But they had to know that was going to happen.
Oh, no.
Sure.
How does their board, how does their corporate board approve of that?
David, you know Hollywood a little bit more than the rest of us. What do you really think that they were going to be punished with the drop of their stock, or do they think they were going to get praised?
How old is Jack Dorsey? He's a millennial, like I am. I mean, he's just a young punk. He has all this power.
Yeah.
You know, he pretends to be very intellectual and meta, like he's thinking about all these things, but I don't even know I don't even think they cared. I don't even think that even factored into the decision. They just hate him so much. They're like, he's got to go.
Yeah.
And then they'll suffer the consequences later. Yeah, but there were, and then you have these people on Twitter, they're literally baking cakes, printing out the account suspension and eating it like it's a celebration.
It's amazing to me that such large corporations engage in this politics. I mean, I hope I would stay principled in this, but I run a small business and I don't care what your politics are. I am not bringing my politics and my religion into my business.
We live in a day and age where the Twitter terms and conditions are more important than our Bill of Rights.
Yep.
If I turn away customers because of their politics, because they're a Democrat, I'm harming my employees.
They don't care.
I'm harming my company.
No, this is
why would I do that? That is not smart.
Yeah, no, you know, and it's one of the things where it's scary, but at the same time amusing because all of these random brands started putting out these political statements.
Oh, like gas companies.
You know, yeah, and so like what, and then you get the people who just think it's funny, so they want to capitalize on the moment and put out like fake statements. And I totally fell for one. It was like supposedly the Olive Garden saying that they were
no more lifetime pasta pass for Sean Hannity.
Yeah.
And I'm like, WTF? I'm like, seriously? Like, how ridiculous is this?
Then they had to come back and say, no, Sean Hannity does still have his lifetime pasta pass.
But the thing, but seriously,
how are they making money with that? I don't know.
But seriously, one of the biggest reasons why I'm against corporations doing the whole cancel culture thing is because it never ends. If you give in to somebody calling you and emailing you, if a group starts emailing and saying you need to condemn this, we're going to boycott you if you don't do it. Once you go that route, now you have to keep doing that over and over.
I don't know if you know my story, but that's literally the story of my life. I worked for a small local business, okay, but I was fired because the local mob, the Antifa progressive mob, found out about my social media activism in the conservative movement, and they literally screenshotted my post, tagged my employer, and said, "Fire this guy now. He's a racist." I was being critical of Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
During a sensitive time, and so my boss, I worked there for 4.5 years, overnight, threw me under the table, fired me less than 24 hours later, and you're right. And I had no respect for him, you know, and I said, you know what, maybe you do have the right because we looked at lawyers and it's a right to work state. But also what we need to realize is Twitter is not a small local business. They're like, oh, it's a private company. This is a monopoly.
Yes.
Okay, Twitter holds a monopoly on the dissemination of information.
That's what's weird about the left because
I'm trying
to think of the last time that they talked about monopolistic companies. I don't know if it's banks or but if you talk to the left, they love to bust up companies. Are you kidding me? Now all of a sudden they're the biggest free market.
Eat the rich.
Now they love to bust up companies. Now all of a sudden they're free market capitalists.
Right. So so you guys are podcasters. So I don't know if you're fans of Tim Pool or not.
Of course.
But I mean, how can you not? But he came out. I thought this was absolutely brilliant. And to your point, he said a major political party and massive multinational corporations are removing their political opposition. Mm-hmm. It's a cultural coup. When Twitter removed the president, I don't think they gave a shit if they lost $5 million the next morning because this is exactly what's happening. It's a political.
Well, you had Michelle Obama. You had Michelle Obama literally calling for this to happen.
Right.
I mean, you had pressure from incredibly powerful people to pull the plug. plug. And so what's funny is that I look at it like this. You've got like the medium-sized fish in Twitter that gets eaten by the bigger fish, Facebook, because then Facebook followed along and shut down the president's communications. Now you got Amazon coming, and they're shutting down the president and anybody in that is right-leaning, shutting down Parler and all these other websites.
Shopify, Spotify.
Well,
Pinterest,
Johnny, when you said
everything.
where does the Republican Party go from here, that's why I think, okay, and I know people were, I probably shouldn't even said anything after the on Wednesday or Thursday or whatever last week, but people were like, if how can you call yourself a Republican? I'm so ashamed to be a Republican. It's like, stop. In a week, you could look back and see things differently.
Correct.
And nothing in politics happens by chance. These people plan things out as far as the measures they're going to take and what they think are going to happen. And if I was giving advice to every Republican out there, it would be that you need to stick to your principles. You need to still be a part of the party, and don't be so quick to backpedal, because when they can censor President Trump and others, you think that, because that's President Trump and the way he acted. Oh, no. Once they're done with him, then you'll be then someone else will be too radical. Then it's Ron Paul.
It's true.
Ron Paul's not even in Congress anymore.
He's barely a Republican.
He's like selling. Ron Paul is like
He's a libertarian.
selling homeschool material.
Right.
And they're taking out Ron Paul. And then when he's too radical, then I think he was even shocked by it. He was like, really? I didn't even think I was on your radar anymore. And then it'll be someone else. And then it'll be someone else. And then it'll be you. So you have to stand firm now. Stop it from happening to anyone, because just because one Republican might be a little out in left or right field and you don't agree with them, be careful about turning your back so quickly on somebody just because they became unpopular, because they'll do the same things to the next person.
Well, that's
this is about political power. It's not about morality and the Constitution.
Right. Well, who saw the writing on the wall is other foreign leaders.
Oh, yeah.
And so you've made a step in the wrong direction when
Angela
Mexico,
Merkel,
Germany, France, Russia, China. Yeah. I mean, when you have those countries telling you, you kind of messed up over here, buddy. Like that's not cool.
Oh, against Trump, but that's just them ingratiating themselves to Biden.
No, it's not. So the reason why
they're saying Twitter did the wrong thing.
They're
denouncing the censorship.
Angela Merkel even said that this is a problem.
This is going too far. This is a problem.
You went too far.
Well, they're sensitive about the Germans. They're real sensitive to some of that stuff. You bring up the F word or they have a different N word in Germany.
This is the conversation that people really need to start having. Is that now that Twitter has moved past the line that no one thought they were going to really cross with a lifetime ban. So why do you have terrorists still with Twitter accounts?
Right.
Why do you still have the Ayatollah that talks about killing Jews every other week?
They
why
throw gays off buildings.
Why do you have these people still on your platform if you're all about the speech and making sure there's no hate speech and
I'm pretty sure it's
violence?
still the state policy. I'm pretty sure it's still state policy of Iran that Israel doesn't have the right to exist. So they want
Sorry,
another
that's
Holocaust.
Islamophobic. I'm very triggered.
Yeah,
you can be triggered.
You triggered?
How quickly Joe and I are like,
we're going to censor your speech. You're going to
censor me.
Again, you have the prime minister, you have the president of China, who is literally doing a genocide in the Uyghurs, and they're allowed to still have their platforms. Again, Twitter is the hypocrisy is so big when it comes to this.
But this is what really pains me though. But yet, despite their selective moral indignation, there are smart people, Republicans, that are cowering right now. Like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, we're so sorry for Trump. They're just begging for forgiveness for Trump. Get out of here, man.
Look,
These people don't care.
I'll be 100%
The Democrats
honest.
actually respect the Democrat. They won't say this.
They won't say it.
They respect and are envious of what Trump was able to do.
100%. That's why
and
they
wish that they could
that's
do
why they
something
wanna
like
take him
that.
out.
And I'll be honest. The only part that I have apologized for and that I feel guilty about is actually the people that I know, and even those that I don't know, that have been assaulted in the media. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's a prominent AP journalist, and I'm not even going to mention his name, because he's got enough attention right now, anyways, who has literally been receiving death threats. Okay, and I get it if you don't like the media and you think the media is biased, and I'm right there with you. Okay, I have a lot of severe questions about integrity in journalism, but I draw the line at again, violence, and it was heartbreaking to see pictures from the rally where you see all of this media equipment, cameras, chairs, hard cases, all this kind of stuff, like basically in a trash pile, because the media, like, they just got up and, I mean, some of them obviously went in to document what was happening. The others had to run for their lives because they literally felt their lives were at stake. And to have someone, again, have their life threatened for a job that they're doing, regardless of whether you agree with it or not, their lives should not be on the line.
Yeah.
And
It's like war correspondents, I actually have respect for war correspondents, If you're willing to show up with a camera, and I've got an M4 and you got a camera, I mean, I respect that.
Elijah Schaefer, slightly offensive, one of my friends, he's been completely deplatformed. But guess what? He was doing it in the summer too, during all these Antifa rallies. He got his ass beat multiple times.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I think that's really smart. And you know what? That's his
always
calling.
fakes, right?
Yeah, that's his calling. He feels like, but he ran in there. He ran into the
Like
Capitol.
Andy now.
Yeah,
Andy,
like Andy, who's also a good friend.
Love that guy. I mean,
he had a press pass. Elijah did. He like in theory he was doing his job. He was he was authorized actually to be there.
Yeah.
But they still deplatformed him.
But this is the role of where we need to have the conversation. Once you get into a violence, when it becomes violent is when it's gone too far. When you have posts that go into violence, that calls into violence. But that's the reason why we're all upset is because it's not been equal across the line.
No, because
you see BLM. There's a picture of Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi and AOC
it's video.
talking about pushing violence.
Oh, yeah,
getting in people's faces,
get in their face,
them down when they're on the floor. There should be uprisings all over the country,
right?
And that's why I'm saying
selective moral indignation.
If Trump is fully responsible for what happened on Wednesday, then these individuals that I just named
Joe Biden
should be held responsible. Joe
Biden was on stage at the presidential debate. He wouldn't even denounce Antifa. I mean, I'm not agreeing with that, but I mean, loyalty. Am I right? The second after the Capitol happened, all the Republicans came out and said, "We denounce this. We can't believe it happened." Guess what? We were very polite and very kind all summer long, and we dealt with a lot of bullshit. And then finally, some people snapped, and then immediately the GOP and the Republicans just want to turn their back and say, "Oh, can't believe," just for what, some moral superiority or virtue signaling. I mean, honestly,
that's all
let's listen to the heart of these Americans, and they feel disenfranchised. There are 75 million voters who feel disenfranchised right now, and this goes back to your point. For the past 4 years, Donald Trump has been saying this: "Oh, anti-establishment this, anti-establishment that." The corrupt political swamp, it exists within the GOP too. Do I think that that was a mistake? No, because it awoke a sleeping beast. He finally gave a voice to these people who felt underrepresented, and guess what? It will give birth to a new class of American leaders from here on out, and we've already seen them in this past election. Not all of them won. A lot of them did. We have people like Madison Cawthorn, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Greene, and
she's carrying in the Capitol.
Oh, yeah, Byron down in Southwest Florida.
Yes, exactly. And guess what? There's only more that are coming through the pipeline, and you know what? We can't be the party of Trump. Listen, the party did grow a lot, and we can thank Trump for that, and we can always look back at this moment in history and say he really inspired a lot of people to come out, people that like me that were never even into politics before. But it can't be all about him moving forward. But we will always look back, and we will credit him as the grandfather, just like we do with Reagan now.
Well,
that's why the Reagan
20 years from now, we're going to be in a completely different conversation. Trump was the one that ignited the walkaway campaign, that ignited the Blexit campaign,
and it was exciting.
And they are going to continue moving forward as we continue going as a party. But you hit it right on the spot that the way this party moves forward is by going local, focusing on your local elections with your local leaders. That's how you get back into it. Because at the end of the day, we are five.
Yeah, we're going to get the House.
We are 5 people away from getting the House, and we will find a way to get back the Senate.
What other Republican can say that they've had rappers endorse them?
Like,
I'm proud of that. Hey, I was proud of the Pastor Troy endorsement. I was, and
look, I mean, to your
absolutely.
point, to what David was saying, you're absolutely right. I mean, he was able to frame Republican talking points that have been, just worn out for the past 30, 40 years and restructure them in a way that made sense to people and actually made people rethink their political loyalties.
Yeah.
Because he has pulled people from the Hispanic community and the Black community, and all that is very real. And as Anibal always likes to point out, it doesn't have to be widespread. It doesn't have to be a huge wave. You just need to move the needle a little bit. And he did that quite a bit. And so
I think Republicans that are elected need to be careful. If there's any Republican elected officials, you need to be careful. I would tread lightly. I wouldn't be so quick to turn your back on Trump, because you're going to send the wrong message to a lot of voters. A lot of the people that support Trump, they also don't agree with everything Trump says.
Right.
You don't have to disavow Trump to somehow ingratiate yourself to some, Republican Party that's going to wake up on, the next day after the inauguration and be different. Politicians need to tread lightly, especially if you're a Republican. Don't be so quick to turn your back on Trump, because those voters are still there, and they'll come out for the right people, and they're going to come out for a candidate that we don't even know yet.
Right. And it's got to be, like Anibal said this earlier, it's got to be for the values, not for the party, not for Trump.
Right.
It's the values that he
Exactly.
brought to the forefront. America first, period. Freedom versus tyranny, period. And all these people that are disavowing him, that actually smells very suspicious to the average American, because they're like, now we don't trust you.
Well, yeah.
Because you're exactly what he was warning us about this whole time.
Yeah.
You're
the-
going to
the
jump
future of
ship
the
10
party-
days before the inauguration.
Well, and the future of the party is to be the party of the working man, right? The unions, the police unions are coming over. Union workers in general are coming over.
So really quick, let's dissect what Anibal just said, and I actually have my best friend texting me who's saying that he's probably not going to vote for God knows how long, simply because of what's just taken place. So, in regards to the possible impeachment of the president, and I understand both sides of the argument. On one hand, I think it makes the whole situation worse, and maybe it fires up these people to make a second round go at whatever mayhem they want to cause. On the other hand, do you need to set the president, draw the line in the sand, and say, hey, enough's enough? And I know we're about 20 minutes over, so let's kind of wrap it up with this. So, I mean, again, does the impeachment happen, yes or no? And do you believe it should happen, yes or no?
So and I'm going to take this real quick.
Yeah.
The reason why I feel that there are two ways this is going to happen. If the articles of impeachment are issued by the House in the next day or two, it won't be taken up in the Senate until the day before the
I
inauguration.
thought they dropped him today, though.
If they did, it has to get voted upon. It was issued today, and then it has to be voted in the House,
Okay.
and then there's at least 3 days for the impeachment stuff to go in. The Senate has already recessed until January 19th, so they're not going to pick it up then. If they allow this to happen, you're going to be impeaching someone that's no longer even in the White House to be able to move forward for this. So it's a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
But politically, it makes all sense for Democrats to just talk about impeachment and not talk about anything else. But if they do that, they're sinking Biden's next 100 days, because it takes like 2 months for this whole process to go in. And remember,
Well, that's part of the fallout. That's part of the fallout that they're saying, well, if we start this process, it's going to hold everything else up, and it's going to hurt Biden in the long run.
I love it. Let them do it. Let them try to do it. Because what you are watching this on Facebook now, where people are like, oh, send your politician to impeach him so that he doesn't run for president again. That's not how any of this works. You have no idea what you're talking about if you think that impeaching the president, trying to impeach the president a second time, is going to make him not be able or disqualify him from running in 2014 or any other time. That's not how any of this works.
Yeah, well, Hector's also saying Pelosi gave the VP 24 hours to implement the 25th Amendment, which I don't think he'll do.
No.
Or the House moves to impeach, which I think at this point, just call her bluff. I mean, really, what do you have to lose? Joe,
Do you want to cover this? Well, do you want to cover this?
Well, I don't know. I just literally just now I received a
Breaking
text
news.
message, breaking news that that the president has issued a declaration of a state of emergency in Washington D.C.
So the FBI is saying
to
that
allow-
there's going. Yeah, the FBI is saying that
Well, that's
they're
gonna fuel the
expecting
conspiracy
rioting
theories.
to
Right.
occur before the inauguration or right after the inauguration. That's in every capital city, also in the United States, all 50.
I saw that. I saw that about the increase of security needed.
Yeah, and I mean,
in
I
the
had
state
some
capitals.
I
and
had
that sort
some
of thing.
people. I had some people texting me about all the soldiers and everything getting and I was actually curious if Trump was the one. I was hoping that Trump was the one that was calling him for them, right? I mean, he's
But
the
again, does
president.
this fuel the
but-
left's
but he-
conspiracy theories that he's going
Well, no,
to
they
somehow
just won't-
try to usurp the inauguration?
Oh no! What they'll
and-
do is they'll say things like, did Trump do this or did Pence do it? Is
Yeah.
who's talked to Pence? Yeah, I mean, like
It's all conspiracy.
They're going to create conspiracy when you know what's happened is they've went to President Trump and they've said, hey, look, we got to have more security, obviously. Right. Okay. And Trump's like, yeah, whatever. Okay. Declaration of emergency, which doesn't mean that there's actually an emergency, but it frees up the funds and allows the federal agencies to do their thing and move in. And so FEMA and, others will show up.
Look and see if I think it was the mayor of DC that requested the declaration of.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I think that because I don't know what the FBI knows, but they're expecting something to happen.
Yeah, same person who sat on her hands during all the BLM rallies.
Well, and also the same person that literally on January 21st is going to, try and move to have DC, considered a state along with Guam and Puerto Rico, so that.
Look,
do you think any of that
no
stuff's
mistake about
happening?
it, especially now.
Happen at 50, no more. We can't make that happen.
Especially now with what's happening, they're going to take every opportunity to push through everything that they want in making DC a state, Puerto Rico a state, stacking the courts, all that's going to be on the table. I guarantee you, because they're going to leverage this and you try to use this against Republicans every chance they get.
Of course.
Go.
Well, no, and I was just going to say, kind of bringing it full circle, if they really do succeed in impeaching Donald Trump, it will truly disgrace his entire term, and I don't think it invalidates any of the good things that he's done, but it will hurt him.
You know how history looks back on presidents completely differently, right?
Correct.
Remember George W. Bush, who now everybody's was next to maybe Jimmy Carter, was one of the nicest presidents there was, one of the most gracious people. Just remember, they had little dolls that looked like George W. Bush with a Hitler mustache and would hang him by a pole, by a noose, and burn him. Just remember in effigy. That's how they were saying he was a war criminal, a Nazi, this, that, and that. That's how they were treating George W. Bush.
Oh, yeah.
And now they talk about him like he's this, look how nice he is, and he and Michelle Obama are friends. Oh, look, he gave her a treat. He gave her some candy at the funeral. They're best buds, So I think we're going to look back on Trump and remind him most likely for more of the good things.
I think history will favor Trump very kindly, and he will be remembered as one of the greatest presidents of all time. But I still believe that if they do this, it really will, especially after what happened at the Capitol, it really will disgrace. It just unfortunately puts a stain on every wonderful thing he
think
did.
About it. Think about it.
It's not going to help people that were already.
There's no purpose. There's no purpose to impeach some. It's like firing somebody after they've given you their resignation.
Right.
I quit. No, you're fired. The person's leaving anyway. Trump is leaving, on the 20th, and that's it. So anything you're doing to try to force the guy out is purely political. Don't tell me it's, we have to do something. No.
So I'll say this. Crystal Ball from The Hill probably is one of the only few anchors I know left that has so much hatred for President Bush. So I won't be surprised if people are going to be talking about Trump for a while in effigy. What I will say is this. I do not see that. I don't see him getting impeached a second time.
No,
honestly, the reason why is because I don't think they're going to get 15
Lindsey Graham's already said no. Other Republicans,
15, you would have to flip 15 Republican senators. And at the most, you have 3 or 4 that are in the works saying it.
And he doesn't qualify for the 25th. And he doesn't qualify for the 25th.
They're saving the 25th for Joe Biden.
I was trying to. Yeah, they are.
They're going to get
assuming that Joe Biden's going to live the first 100 days without getting smothered by Kamala.
No, the only thing that could happen, the 25th doesn't apply. The 25th doesn't apply. He can't get impeached because they're not going to get enough votes in the Senate. So that's not going to happen. Yeah. The only thing that could happen literally is after he leaves office, a prosecutor in D.C. or somebody could charge him with a crime.
And they're hell bent on believing that's going to happen
and
too.
Try to convict. And could you imagine Donald Trump going on trial? If the trial of the century, here we go.
Right. Get your popcorn.
Keep him in the news.
Your popcorn.
Keep him in the news. And that's what the news wants.
He'd be running an apprentice show
if their impeachment attempt fails, if they're successful, it will disgrace Donald Trump. If they're unsuccessful, it will disgrace them. And it will be very embarrassing that they tried to impeach him twice.
And the only reason why there's weight to any of this, if you think about it, the only reason why there's weight to this, because there are Republicans that view Donald Trump as a challenger. Keep in mind, it's not just the Democrats that want Trump gone.
100%.
Trump is a problem for a lot of politicians.
Yes. Back in politics.
Because nobody can run for president in 2024 on the Republican side until Donald Trump says what he's going to do.
Yeah.
Right. Which, by the way, Intel says will definitely wants to run again.
I don't.
You think so?
After Wednesday, I don't.
After
yeah.
Wednesday, I don't.
No, you think so?
Before Wednesday, maybe. After Wednesday,
Right.
no.
I don't know if he's changed his mind since then, but I know before, the
4
rumor
years-
has it that he had until Wednesday, he had every full intention of
4
running
years
again.
is
I
like 40
agree.
years. Hey,
Yeah.
look, he would declare in about 2 years.
Yep.
2.5
Yeah.
maybe.
Good, and then the MAGA rallies start up again.
Hey, 2.5 years in politics
thing
might
on
as
the
well be
road.
20 years. 2.5 years is like 20 years in
Yeah.
politics. So.
Right.
A lot
can
can
happen.
happen.
Hey, if we go into some kind of like economic depression, you could see Donald Trump on TV day in and day out saying, "I told you so. Give me the job back, and I'll get us ramp back up."
We're definitely not going to give
see
you
it.
depression.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. That was a great conversation. It was certainly therapeutic, I think, for me. But for all of you watching, thank you so much. God loved all the comments in the comments section. And again, don't forget to subscribe for the audio version of our podcast. We're about to hit 1,000 listens on the audio version of our podcast, which I'm very excited about. So make sure you subscribe over at our tech overlords at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, and Amazon. And I'm going to keep calling them that.
Smash our like button.
Make sure you like, share, comment on this video as well. And again, can't appreciate enough our special guest, David, for joining us tonight.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, you definitely got to come back. Definitely got to come back. Joe Wicker, Anibal Cabrera, Siri apparently wants to jump in on the conversation. Do you guys
She was listening the whole time.
of
I
course.
got notes.
course they're listening.
She's gonna be doxing us all tomorrow.
Hillary Clinton isn't in court, then Trump will not be in courts.
Yeah, Tim Cook's taking notes. Do you guys have a story besides what happened on Wednesday that you're watching? Just to kind of wrap up here the last we're already at 90 minutes.
So my biggest things that I'm watching are actually shipping disputes and fishing disputes off of Chile and Peru from Chinese.
Cocaine Mitch got problems with his ships coming in.
Oh my God.
He got some problems.
Chile and Peru.
His wife's not transportation secretary anymore. She can't clean it up.
That's actually funny enough. That's a liberal conspiracy theory that Mitch
What?
McConnell is in bed with the Chinese government because of his wife.
Yeah, that's not racist.
That's one of the ones that they have out there that
That's
you don't
not
hear a lot
racist
about.
at all.
Is she was born in China?
No, like her family is from China, I guess, and they have with the shipping company and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, but apparently they think that McConnell's in bed with the Chinese government.
It wouldn't surprise me if his security clearance took longer to pass whenever they
all
did his
of our
review.
security
But
clearances are going to.
Hey, but you can still sit on the Senate Intelligence Committee, right?
Hey.
Dating a Chinese spy.
yeah,
David, any other stories we should be watching out there?
Oh my God, I'm just paying attention to all this. This is the greatest show in the world. I got my popcorn every day, all day. I wake up, start the day. It doesn't stop till we go to sleep. I mean,
See what Papa
it's
Trump's
just-
saying?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, we don't know what he's saying
Not
now.
anymore.
No.
Oh, the lawsuit that Parlo brought up today against Amazon. I'm actually looking forward to.
Oh,
seeing what that
actually,
looks
Yeah,
like.
but his lawyers jumped ship.
from
Already?
The Parler's
Parler.
lawyers jumped ship.
already
on
jumped
him.
ship.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a huge mess. But again, crisis creates opportunity, and I think hopefully some conservative leaning entrepreneurs are going to step up, and and again,
That's another thing
You don't
I
have
don't
to
get.
beat.
What's up
You don't
with
have to
the-
beat Amazon. Just just be a competitor. Be an
But what's
alternative.
up with the
solution.
lawyers? What's up with these lawyers that it's like you retain somebody and then the opposition finds out who your lawyer is, then they call up the firm and then they threaten them and the firm's like, all right, screw it, we don't want you as a client. Like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah,
Like-
well, they're afraid of then losing all
Why
their other
take a
clients and
case?
all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, and
It's
So-
capitalism, baby.
It is.
Capitalism.
All right. Again, thank you so much to everybody for
Have some
watching.
guts.
We'll see you back here next Monday, 7 o'clock.
Be a man.